A waitress was heading home when a wounded stranger jumped into her car. He was a mafia boss on the run, and she was his only chance. What she didn't know, helping him survive the next 2 days would change both their lives forever. The bullet tore through Damian Russo's arm before he heard the gunshot. 1 second, he was shaking hands with Marco Castellano under the flickering streetlight of the abandoned warehouse district. The next, the world exploded into chaos. Glass shattered. Men screamed. Someone had leaked the location of their truce meeting, and now both sides were shooting at shadows. Get down. Damian's driver lunged for him, but another burst of gunfire sent the man sprawling. Damian hit the concrete hard, his shoulder screaming in pain. Blood soaked through his expensive suit jacket. Around him, his convoy scattered like roaches under a kitchen light. The Castellanos weren't doing much better. Half their men were diving for cover behind rusted shipping containers. This wasn't supposed to happen. Neutral ground. No weapons. A civilized conversation between civilized criminals. Someone had broken the rules. Through the smoke and muzzle flashes, Damian caught a glimpse of Marco's face, just as confused, just as betrayed. This wasn't the Castellanos. This was someone else. Someone who wanted them both dead. But right now, survival mattered more than answers. Damian rolled behind a dumpster as bullets pinged off metal. His hand was slick with blood, but he could still move his fingers. Not arterial. He'd live if he got out of here. Boss. Tony, his closest bodyguard, fired from behind a car. The SUV. The SUV exploded. Damian didn't wait. He ran. The streets of Southside Chicago at midnight were a maze of chain-link fences, corner stores with bars on the windows, and shadows that moved when you weren't looking. Damian stumbled through an alley, pressing his good hand against the wound. Behind him, headlights swept the main road. The Castellanos had recovered faster than his own men. Or maybe his men were dead. The thought hit him harder than the bullet. He'd built an empire on loyalty and fear, and now he was bleeding in an alley, like a common thug. His phone buzzed. He yanked it out, saw 3 missed calls from his consigliere, Vincent. Relief flooded through him, until he remembered that only 3 people knew about tonight's meeting. Him, Marco, and Vincent. Damian crushed the phone under his heel. SUVs prowled the streets like wolves. Spotlights cut through the darkness. They were checking every alley, every doorway. Damian pressed himself against a brick wall, breathing hard. Without a weapon, without backup, he was just meat. Think. He'd survived worse than this. He'd clawed his way up from the docks, built a criminal empire brick by bloody brick. He wasn't going to die in some trash-filled alley, because... Headlights turned the corner. Damian ran again, legs pumping, lungs burning. He burst out into a wider street and immediately regretted it. More lights. More engines. They were boxing him in. There, a 24-hour diner, its neon sign buzzing like a dying wasp. A few cars in the parking lot. Damian sprinted toward them, keeping low. If he could just find an unlocked vehicle, hotwire it. The back door of a beat-up Honda Civic hung slightly open. Damian didn't question his luck. He dove inside, pulling the door shut as quietly as possible. The interior smelled like old coffee and vanilla air freshener. He crouched low in the footwell behind the driver's seat, every muscle tense, waiting for the shout, the gunshot, the end. The SUV rolled past, spotlight sweeping over the parking lot. Damian held his breath. The light moved on. He exhaled slowly, tasting copper. His arm throbbed. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the pain was rushing in to fill the void. He needed a hospital, or at least a first aid kit, and someone stupid enough to. The driver's door opened. Damian's hand moved to his empty holster. Useless. He looked up as a young woman slid into the seat, keys jangling. She was maybe 25, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing a coffee-stained waitress uniform. She looked exhausted. She looked like she'd had a long shift and just wanted to go home. She tossed her purse onto the passenger seat, jammed the key in the ignition, and froze. Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. For a moment, neither of them moved. Damien saw her process it in real time. The expensive suit, the blood, the look of a man who'd just run out of options. Her hand inched toward her purse. "Don't," Damien said quietly. She didn't scream. That impressed him. Instead, her jaw tightened. "Get out of my car." "Can't do that. I'll call the cops." "Go ahead." Damien watched another SUV cruise past on the street. "Those men out there will probably thank you, right before they kill us both." She followed his gaze, saw the black SUV, the spotlight, the hard-faced men inside. Something shifted in her expression. Not fear, exactly. Calculation. "You're bleeding on my seats," she said. "I'll buy you a new car." "You're lying." "Probably," Damien grimaced. "But right now, you're my only chance. And if they find me here, they'll assume you helped. So really, we're in this together now." "I didn't." "Drive," his voice hardened. "Not a request. An order. Now." She stared at him for 3 more seconds. He watched her hands shake on the steering wheel, watched her glance at the diner, where she'd been safe 30 seconds ago, then at the prowling SUVs. Watched her make the worst decision of her life. The engine roared to life. She pulled out of the parking lot just as another SUV turned the corner, its spotlight sweeping toward them. She accelerated smoothly, not too fast, not too slow. Just another tired worker heading home after a late shift. In the rearview mirror, Damien saw the SUV's spotlight linger on them, then move on. They'd bought themselves maybe 60 seconds. "Where?" she asked, voice tight. "Anywhere but here." She turned down a side street, then another, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Damien stayed low, watching the mirrors, watching her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara." She didn't ask his. Maybe she already knew. "And you just ruined my life." "Welcome to the club," Damien muttered. Behind them, more headlights appeared. The hunt was on. "Left. Take the left." Clara jerked the wheel, her Honda squealing around the corner onto a narrow residential street. Behind them, headlights multiplied like demon eyes. 2 SUVs now. Maybe 3. "They're gaining," she said, her voice barely steady. "Don't take the main roads." Damien pulled himself up slightly, ignoring the fire in his arm. "You know the back ways. I've lived here my whole life." "Then prove it." Clara's jaw clenched. She hated being ordered around, hated the blood seeping into her backseat, hated that she'd made the split-second choice to help a stranger who clearly lived in a world she'd spent her whole life avoiding. But she knew these streets better than anyone. She took a sharp right into an alley so narrow her side mirrors nearly scraped brick. Trash cans blurred past. A dog barked. The alley spat them out onto another side street, and Clara immediately turned again, weaving through the grid of forgotten neighborhoods that tourists never saw. "You're good," Damien muttered. "Shut up. I'm thinking." Behind them, one SUV followed into the alley. The other circled around, trying to cut them off. These guys knew what they were doing. Professional. Organized. Clara's stomach twisted. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who needs to disappear for a few hours." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." Clara glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Even bleeding and hunted, he had a presence, the kind of calm that came from being in control even when everything was falling apart. His suit probably cost more than her car. His watch definitely did. This wasn't a mugging victim. This wasn't some street dealer in over his head. This was someone important. The SUV behind them accelerated. "There's an underpass up ahead," Clara said quickly. "Old rail line. No lights." "Take it." She floored the gas pedal. Her Honda wasn't built for speed, but it was small and nimble. The underpass loomed ahead, a concrete tunnel swallowing the road, dark and abandoned. Construction barriers blocked one lane. Graffiti covered the walls. Clara killed her headlights and plunged into darkness. "What are you?" Trust me. She couldn't see anything. Just blackness and the faint glow of the exit 50 yards ahead. She kept her foot steady, muscle memory guiding her. She'd driven this route 1,000 times. Behind them, the SUV's headlights blazed into the tunnel, then abruptly cut out. Clara pulled hard to the right, tucking her car behind a massive concrete support pillar. She threw the gear into park and held her breath. Seconds crawled by. The SUV rolled past slowly, its engine a low growl in the dark. Clara could see the silhouettes of two men inside, their heads turning, searching. One of them held a flashlight, sweeping the beam across the tunnel walls. Damien didn't move, didn't breathe. The flashlight beam passed over their hiding spot, inches away from the Honda's hood. Clara's heart hammered so hard, she was sure they'd hear it. The SUV kept rolling. Slowly. So slowly. Then it was past them, heading toward the exit. Clara waited until the taillights disappeared before she exhaled. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding her system. "Start the car," Damien said quietly. But no lights. Not yet. She obeyed, her fingers fumbling with the key. The engine turned over with a soft rumble. She reversed carefully, using the faint glow from the entrance to navigate, then turned back the way they'd come. When they emerged from the tunnel, she flicked the headlights back on and took a different route, northwest, toward the industrial district. "You've done this before," Damien said. It wasn't a question. "Done what?" "Escaped. Lost a tail." Clara's laugh was bitter. "My ex-boyfriend was a paranoid drug dealer. I learned to spot cops and lose them before he got arrested. Turns out the skills transfer." "Lucky me." She met his eyes in the mirror. "Who are you? And don't give me some vague bullshit. Those men back there, they're not random. They're organized. They have radios and spotlights," and she stopped, her mind finally catching up. "Oh God." "What?" "I know your face," her voice went quiet. "I've seen it before. In the neighborhood. People talk." Damien said nothing. Clara's grip tightened on the wheel. "You're Damien Russo." Silence. "You're she couldn't even say it. Mob boss. Crime lord. The man who ran half the South Side from the shadows. The man responsible for how many bodies? How many ruined lives?" "Keep driving," Damien said. "I helped Clara," his voice cut through her panic like a knife. "Those men hunting me? They're the Castellanos. Marco's crew. And if they find you with me, they won't ask questions. They won't care that you didn't know. They'll put a bullet in your head just to be safe." Her blood ran cold. "So yes," Damien continued. "You helped the wrong person. But it's too late to undo that now. The only way out is through." Clara's vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. She was a waitress, a sister, a nobody trying to keep her head above water. She wasn't supposed to be caught in some mob war. But he was right. It was too late to turn back. "Where am I going?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look." "I don't know any place like that." "Yes, you do." Damien's eyes met hers in the mirror. "Take me home, Clara." "This is insane." Clara pulled into the narrow gap between two crumbling apartment buildings, her headlights revealing a forgotten pocket of the city. Rusted fire escapes clung to brick walls. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. The kind of place people walked past without seeing. "Kill the lights," Damien said. She did. Darkness swallowed them whole. "There's a garage back here," Clara said quietly. "My dad's old shop. Nobody uses it anymore. Nobody even remembers it exists." Perfect. She guided the car by memory alone, rolling forward until the Honda's nose bumped against a sagging garage door. Clara got out, her legs unsteady, and fumbled with the rusted padlock. Her fingers shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in. The door groaned open, revealing a tomb of forgotten tools and dust-covered machinery. Clara pulled the car inside, and Damien pushed the door shut behind them. The darkness was complete now, suffocating. She found a battery-powered lantern on a workbench, flicked it on. Weak yellow light flooded the space. The garage looked like a museum of her father's life. Tool racks on the walls. A hydraulic lift that hadn't worked in years. Car parts scattered on shelves like mechanical fossils. Everything covered in a thick layer of neglect. "How long has it been abandoned?" Damien asked, leaning heavily against the Honda. 3 years. Since my dad died, Clara's voice was flat. Heart attack. Right there by that workbench. "I'm sorry. Don't," she pointed at an old chair. "Sit. You're still bleeding." Damien lowered himself into the chair with a grunt. His face had gone pale, his expensive suit jacket soaked dark with blood. Clara grabbed the lantern and moved to a metal cabinet in the corner. "My dad kept a first aid kit. For the guys who came in after accidents." She pulled out a dented metal box, blew off the dust. Inside, gauze, tape, antiseptic, butterfly bandages. Not much, but better than nothing. "You know what you're doing?" Damien asked. "Enough." Clara set the box on a nearby workbench. "Take off your jacket." He did, wincing. The shirt underneath was worse, shredded fabric and blood. Clara helped him peel it away, trying not to think about the fact that she was undressing a mob boss in her dead father's garage at 1 a.m. The bullet wound was ugly, but clean. Entry and exit, right through the meat of his upper arm. No bone, no artery. Lucky. "You'll live," she said. Disappointing news for several people. Clara almost smiled despite herself. She soaked a clean rag in antiseptic. "This is going to hurt. I've had worse." She pressed the rag to the wound. Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't make a sound. Clara worked quickly, cleaning the entry and exit wounds, her hands steadier now that she had a task to focus on. She'd learned basic wound care 2 years ago when her younger brother Eli got into a car accident. The hospital bills had been crushing, so she'd taught herself to handle minor injuries at home. Never thought she'd be using those skills on a crime lord. "You're good at this," Damien said quietly. "My brother. He was in a crash. Messed up his leg pretty bad." Clara wrapped gauze around Damien's arm with practiced efficiency. "Hospital bills nearly buried us. So I learned. YouTube videos, library books. Enough to handle the small stuff without another ER visit." "Just you and your brother?" "Yeah. Since Dad died. Mom left when I was 12. Clara secured the gauze with medical tape, perhaps tighter than necessary. "Just 2 of us against the world." Damien watched her face in the lantern light. "How old is he?" 17. Senior year of high school. "He's smart, really smart. Wants to go to college." Her voice cracked slightly. "If I can figure out how to pay for it. And you work at that diner." "And I work at that diner." Clara stepped back, examining her handiwork. "Double shifts most days. It's not enough, but it's something." Damien was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your father built all this." Clara looked around the garage. "He was a mechanic. A good one. Worked on cars for anybody who needed help, legal or otherwise. He didn't judge. Said everyone deserves a chance to keep moving forward." She touched a wrench on the workbench, her fingers tracing the worn handle. "He would have helped you too. No questions asked. But you're not your father." "No. I'm not." Clara met his eyes. "I hate what you represent. Everything you people do to neighborhoods like this. The drugs, the violence, the fear. My brother's friend got caught in crossfire last year. 14 years old. Wrong place, wrong time." "I'm sorry," Damien said again. "Stop saying that." Clara's voice hardened. "You're not sorry. You're just sorry it happened to inconvenience you." Damien held her gaze. "You're right. I'm not a good man, Clara. I've done things that would keep you up at night. But I didn't shoot that kid. And the people hunting me right now, they're worse. That's a low bar. It's the only bar I've got." Clara turned away, busying herself with repacking the first aid kit. Outside, she heard the distant wail of sirens. The city never slept, never stopped bleeding. "You need rest," she finally said. "A few hours at least. There's a cot in the back room. My dad used to crash here when he worked late." "And you?" "I need to go upstairs. Check on Eli." Make sure he's okay. Clara moved toward the door. I'll come back before sunrise. Bring food, clean clothes. Then you leave, and we never speak of this again. Clara. She paused, hand on the door. Thank you, Damien said quietly. For the record, you saved my life tonight. Clara didn't turn around.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to regret that. But as she slipped out into the night, leaving the mob boss in her father's garage, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a line she'd never be able to uncross. And somewhere in the darkness, the Castellanos were still hunting. Clara climbed the rusted fire escape behind the building, her legs heavy with exhaustion. 3 floors up, a window she never quite locked properly. She slipped inside, landing softly in her cramped kitchen. The apartment was dark and quiet. She stood there for a moment, letting her eyes adjust, listening to the familiar sounds of home. The refrigerator's hum, the neighbor's television bleeding through thin walls, her brother's soft breathing from the bedroom down the hall. Normal. Everything was normal. Except her hands were still shaking. Clara moved through the apartment like a ghost, checking the front door, locked and chained, then peering through the blinds at the street below. A black SUV rolled past slowly, its spotlight sweeping across parked cars and doorways. Her blood turned to ice. They were here, in her neighborhood, hunting. She let the blinds fall and turned away, her heart hammering.
Think.
She needed to think, but exhaustion dragged at her bones, and the adrenaline crash was hitting hard. The kitchen table was buried under a mountain of envelopes. Bills. Always bills. Clara sank into a chair and stared at them without seeing. Medical bills from Eli's accident. Rent. Overdue by 2 weeks. Electric. Water. Student loan payments she'd been dodging for 3 months. Of all people to end up in my car, she whispered to the empty room. A mobster. A crime lord. The exact kind of man her father had warned her about, even as he'd fixed their cars and taken their money. Stay away from that life, Clara, he'd said. It swallows people whole and never spits them back out. And now she'd hidden one in his garage. Clara pressed her palms against her eyes. She should call the police.
Turn Damien in.
Claim he'd forced her at gunpoint, which wasn't far from the truth. But then she remembered the way those SUVs had moved. Coordinated. Professional. The way Damien's eyes had looked when he said they'd kill her just to be safe. He wasn't lying.
She was in this now.
Whether she liked it or not. Meanwhile, in the garage below, Damien couldn't sleep. His arm throbbed despite Clara's careful bandaging, but the pain wasn't what kept him awake. It was the arithmetic of betrayal. He sat on the dusty cot in the back room, a borrowed blanket around his shoulders, and ran through the calculations again. Only 3 people knew about tonight's meeting with the Castellanos. Himself, Marco, and Vincent, his consigliere, his right-hand man for 8 years. Vincent, who'd suggested the location. Vincent, who'd insisted on keeping the security details small to avoid spooking Marco. Vincent, who'd conveniently been checking the perimeter when the shooting started. Damien's jaw tightened. He'd built his empire on loyalty and trust, and someone had sold him out. The question was why? Money? Fear? Ambition? It didn't matter. Betrayal was betrayal. He pulled out the burner phone he always kept in his jacket's inner pocket, the one line the Castellanos wouldn't know about. 3 calls, all going to voicemail. Tony, his driver. Dead or captured. Marco from his crew. No answer. Sal from the docks. Nothing. Every line compromised. Every connection severed. Damien Russo, who'd commanded an army yesterday, was alone tonight. He thought about Clara, the tired waitress with calloused hands and a spine made of steel. She could have screamed.
Cooled verán.
Instead, she'd driven him through a war zone like she'd done it before. And she hated him. He'd seen it in her eyes when she'd recognized his name. Not fear, hatred. The kind that came from watching your neighborhood bleed, while men like him got rich. She wasn't wrong. Outside, an engine rumbled past. Damien moved to the small, grimy window and peered through a gap in the boards. Another SUV, creeping down the alley. Searchlight sweeping. They weren't giving up. On the streets, Marco Castellano's lieutenant, a bull-necked man named Frankie, leaned against an SUV and lit a cigarette. Around him, the south side had transformed into a hunting ground. Any sign? He asked into his radio. Negative. Checked every garage on 5th. Nothing. Keep looking. He's bleeding. He can't have gone far. They deployed 8 vehicles, 20 men, and enough cash to buy silence from every corner store owner and street dealer in a 6-block radius. The word was out. 50,000 for information on Damien Russo. No questions asked. Frankie had already paid off 2 beat cops to look the other way. The bridges were being watched. The highways had spotters. Every exit from the south side was covered. Russo was trapped. It was just a matter of time. Boss wants him alive, Frankie reminded his crew. But not too alive. You understand? Laughter crackled through the radio. Frankie took a long drag on his cigarette. Somewhere out there, Damien Russo was hiding like a rat. And when they found him, and they would find him, Frankie was going to enjoy collecting that bonus personally. He climbed back into the SUV. Let's check the industrial district again. And somebody talked to the night workers. Waitresses, security guards, janitors. Someone saw something. The SUV rolled forward, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. Behind a dozen windows, people watched and said nothing. Back in the apartment, Clara finally moved from the kitchen table. She checked on Eli one more time. Still asleep, blessedly oblivious, then grabbed a duffel bag from her closet. Clean clothes, granola bars, bottled water, a road atlas her father had kept in the glove compartment. She didn't know why she was packing, didn't know what morning would bring. But something told her the next 48 hours would change everything. Outside, another SUV prowled past. The neighborhood held its breath. And in the garage below, Damien Russo sat in the darkness and planned his next move, knowing that the most dangerous enemy wasn't the one hunting him from outside. It was the one who'd already gotten close enough to pull the trigger. Clara returned to the garage just before dawn, the duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a thermos of coffee in her hand. She'd managed maybe an hour of sleep, restless, filled with nightmares of spotlights and gunfire. The garage door creaked as she entered. Damien was already awake, standing by the window, watching the alley through a gap in the boards. He'd found one of her father's old work shirts and put it on over the bandages. It was too small across the shoulders, but clean. You came back, he said without turning. Don't sound so surprised. Clara set the bag down with a thud. I brought clothes. Food. You need to leave. I know. I mean now. This morning. Before. I can't. Clara's temper flared. Yes, you can. You walk out that door, you disappear into whatever hole people like you disappear into, and I go back to my life. Damien finally turned to face her. You think it's that simple? I think you're not my problem anymore. Wrong. His voice was quiet but firm. You're in the surveillance footage from that diner parking lot. You're on every traffic camera between there and here. The Castellanos aren't stupid. They'll find that footage by noon if they haven't already. They'll identify your car, your plates, your face. The coffee thermos slipped in Clara's grip.
No.
They wouldn't. They would. They will. Damien moved closer, his expression grave. Clara, the moment I got in your car, you became part of this. Running won't help. Pretending it didn't happen won't help. The only thing that helps now is seeing this through. Through to what? Clara's voice rose. You getting killed? Me getting killed? My brother becoming collateral damage in your mob war? No, Damien's jaw tightened. Through to me ending this.
Permanently.
Clara laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You're one man. Bleeding. Hunted. You think you can just what? Win a war from my dad's garage? I've won wars with less. God, listen to yourself. Clara turned away, running her hands through her hair. You people. You're all the same. So sure you're invincible, that the rules don't apply to you. Meanwhile, the rest of us just try to survive the wreckage you leave behind. You're right. She spun back. What? You're right, Damien repeated. I've left wreckage. Destroyed lives. Made choices that kept me awake at night, he paused. But I'm also the only thing standing between you and the Castellanos right now. So you can hate me all you want. I've earned it, but if you want to protect your brother, you need me alive. I need you gone. Same thing. Eventually, Damien moved to the workbench, picked up the road atlas she'd brought. But first, I need to reach my people. The ones I can still trust. And to do that, I need to move through the city without getting shot. Which means I need someone who knows these streets better than the Castellanos do. Clara stared at him. You're insane. Probably, he spread the atlas open. How well do you know the north side? Don't do this. Clara, he met her eyes. In 48 hours, this ends. I reconnect with my crew, we handle the Castellanos, and I disappear from your life forever. But I can't do it alone. Not this time. Why should I help you? Because you already did, Damien's voice softened. And because I'm promising you right now your brother stays safe. No matter what happens to me, Eli doesn't get touched. I'll make sure of it. Your promises don't mean anything. They mean everything. There was something fierce in his eyes now. I've broken a lot of rules, Clara. Done things I can't take back. But I keep my word. Always. It's the only currency that matters in my world. Clara wanted to argue. Wanted to scream at him to leave, to take his blood money and his broken promises, and get out of her life. But she looked at his face, exhausted, determined, genuine, and felt something shift. He was telling the truth. At least he believed he was. 48 hours, she said quietly. 48 hours. And then you're gone. Forever. You'll never see me again. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. She thought of Eli, still sleeping upstairs. Thought of the bills on the table and the life she'd fought so hard to build from nothing. Thought of her father, who'd helped anyone who asked, no matter what side of the law they lived on. Maybe she was more like him than she'd wanted to admit. I know routes, she finally said. Back roads, industrial areas, places the cops don't patrol. I can get you across the city without hitting major streets. That's all I need. But I have rules. Clara stepped closer, her voice hard. We don't hurt anyone who doesn't deserve it. We don't involve civilians. And if I say it's too dangerous, we stop. Deal? Damien extended his good hand.
Deal.
Clara hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, warm despite the cold garage. When do we start? She asked. Now, Damien folded the atlas. There's an abandoned gas station on the east side. Old friend of mine used to run it before he got out of the business. If I can reach it, I can make contact with people I trust. The east side's crawling with Castellanos. I know. That's why I need you. Clara picked up the duffel bag, her hands steady now. The decision was made. For better or worse, she was all in. Let's go, she said. Before I change my mind. They loaded into the Honda as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The city was waking up. And so was the hunt. Dawn light filtered through grimy windshields as Clara navigated the Honda through a maze of service roads and forgotten alleys. The city looked different at this hour, softer, almost innocent. Workers heading to early shifts. Delivery trucks making their rounds. A world that didn't know about the war being fought in its shadows. Damien sat low in the passenger seat now, a baseball cap pulled down over his face. One of her father's old jackets covered his expensive clothes. To anyone glancing in, he looked like just another working man catching a ride. Take the next right, he said quietly. Then follow the service road behind the industrial park. Clara obeyed, her hands relaxed on the wheel now. The initial terror had burned away, leaving behind a strange calm. Maybe this was shock. Maybe this was acceptance. Either way, she felt oddly focused. The gas station. How far? 3 miles. East side, Near the old railway crossing, Damien checked the side mirror for the 100th time. It's been closed for 5 years. My friend Sal used to run it as a front. Clean business on top, other arrangements below. He retired to Florida, but the property's still in a Trust 1 control. Convenient. Strategic. Damien adjusted his cap. I own 13 properties throughout the city. Most people don't know about them. Safe houses, meeting points, storage facilities. When you operate in the shadows, you need places to hide. Clara took a sharp left, cutting through an empty parking lot to avoid a main intersection. Must be nice. I can barely afford one apartment. It's not about nice. It's about survival. Same thing, isn't it? You survive with safe houses and offshore accounts. I survive with double shifts and prayer. Damien was quiet for a moment. Then, how long have you been working at the diner? For years. Since Dad died and the bills started piling up, Clara merged onto a narrow access road lined with warehouses. Why? Just curious. Don't what? Don't try to humanize this, Clara's voice hardened. We're not friends. We're not partners. This is a transaction. 48 hours, then you're gone. Understood. But he kept watching her, and Clara felt the weight of his attention. It unnerved her, not because it was threatening, but because it felt genuine. Like he actually saw her, not just as a means to an end, but as a person. No one had looked at her like that in years. The service road curved through an industrial zone, abandoned factories, rusted machinery, entire blocks of economic collapse. Clara knew these streets. She'd driven them 1,000 times, taking shortcuts to avoid traffic, finding routes that saved precious minutes and gas money. You really do know the city, Damien observed. You learn the map when every minute counts. When being late means losing a shift means missing rent. Clara navigated around a pothole that could swallow a tire. You learn efficiency when you can't afford mistakes. I learned the same way. Different circumstances, same principle. Clara glanced at him. You weren't always, she gestured vaguely. Rich? Powerful? Damien's smile was thin.
No.
I grew up in a 2-room apartment on the docks. My father worked himself to death loading ships. My mother cleaned houses until her hands bled. I learned early that the world doesn't give you anything. You take it or you die trying. So you chose crime?
I chose survival.
The crime was just the method. That's a convenient excuse. It's an honest one. Clara opened her mouth to argue, then saw the checkpoint. 2 SUVs blocked the road ahead, parked at angles to create a bottleneck. For men in dark clothes, scanning every vehicle that passed through. One held a tablet, probably checking license plates against a database. Damn, Clara breathed. Don't stop, Damien's voice was calm. Don't run. Just slow down naturally. They'll see you.
No.
They'll see a couple. He reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Clara, listen to me. We're together. We're tired. We've been up all night. Car broke down earlier, but we got it running again. We're just trying to get home.
Can you do that?
Her heart hammered. Look at me.
She did.
His eyes were steady, reassuring. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand. You're tougher than you think, he said softly.
Breathe.
Smile. We're fine. Clara took a shaky breath and eased off the gas, letting the Honda roll toward the checkpoint. One of the men raised a hand, signaling her to stop. She did, lowering her window. Morning, the man said. He was young, maybe 30, with cold eyes that had seen too much. Little early to be out. Car trouble, Clara said, forcing a tired smile. She squeezed Damien's hand, not for show, but for courage. Broke down near the highway. Took us forever to get it started. The man peered past her at Damien. That right? Damien lifted his cap slightly, offering a weary nod. Alternator's dying. Need to get to a shop before it quits completely. Where are you headed? Home, Clara said. Pilsen neighborhood. We've been up all night. I just want coffee in my bed. The man studied them. Clara felt sweat trickle down her spine. Beside her, Damien's hand remained steady in hers. Finally, the man stepped back.
All right.
Get that alternator checked. Don't want you stranded again. Will do. Thanks. Clara rolled forward slowly, every muscle tense. In the rearview mirror, she watched the man turn back to his partner. No radio call.
No alarm.
They'd bought it. 100 yards down the road, Clara let out a shaky laugh. Holy, You did great, Damien said. He released her hand, but slowly, as if reluctant. Clara's palm felt cold where his warmth had been. That was insane. That was teamwork, Damien pointed ahead.
There.
See that fence? The gas station's just beyond it. Clara turned down an overgrown access road, the Honda's suspension groaning over broken asphalt. And there it was, a skeletal structure with boarded windows and weeds pushing through concrete. Forgotten.
Perfect.
She parked behind the building, out of sight from the road. We made it, she said, almost surprised. Damien smiled, a real smile this time, not the careful mask he usually wore. We did. And for just a moment, Clara smiled back. Inside the abandoned gas station, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight piercing through broken boards. Damien moved to what had once been the back office, now just empty shelves and a rusted filing cabinet. He pulled aside a loose floor panel, revealing a hidden compartment. You've got to be kidding me, Clara said from the doorway. Damien pulled out a metal box and opened it. Inside, cash, 3 burner phones, a handgun, and a set of clean IDs. Survival caches. I have them scattered across the city. How very spy thriller of you. It's kept me alive this long. He pocketed the gun and one of the phones, then held out a stack of bills to Clara. For supplies. Water, food, anything we might need for the next day or two. There's a convenience store 3 blocks south. Clara stared at the money.
$100 bills.
More than she made in a week. I don't want your money. It's not a gift. It's logistics. Damien pressed the cash into her hand. We need supplies. I can't go. Simple math. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to throw it back in his face. But she thought of the empty fridge upstairs, of Eli who'd need breakfast, of the practical reality of the next 48 hours. Fine, she said, pocketing the bills. 20 minutes. Be careful. Stay alert. Clara rolled her eyes. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. As the Honda pulled away, Damien turned his attention to the burner phone. He powered it on, watching the signal bars climb. One call. He could risk one call to test the waters. He dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times before connecting. Yeah, a cautious voice. Joey, one of his street-level runners. It's me. Silence. Then, boss? Jesus, everyone thought you were. Dead? Not yet. Damien kept his voice low. Who's looking for me? Everyone, man. Castellanos got the whole south side locked down. They're paying for tips, leaning on people. But boss, that's not the worst part. Damien's grip tightened on the phone. Talk. It's Vincent. Your consigliera. Word on the street is he's been seen with Marco Castellano. Not like hostage scene.
Like.
Meeting scene. The confirmation hit Damien like a second bullet. He'd suspected, but hearing it out loud made it real. When? He asked. This morning. Early. Some warehouse on the west side. Damien's mind raced through the implications. Vincent hadn't just leaked the meeting location. He was actively working with the Castellanos. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Joey, listen carefully. I need you to disappear for a few days. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not your girlfriend, not your mother. No 1 inch. Boss, what's happening? A purge. And I need people I can trust still breathing when it's over. Damien paused. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. Good man. Damien ended the call and crushed the phone under his heel. Vincent. His right hand for 8 years. The man who'd helped him build this empire from nothing. The man he'd trusted with his life.
Why?
Across town, in a converted warehouse. Vincent Rossi sat across from Marco Castellano in a pool of harsh fluorescent light. The warehouse was empty except for them and Marco's personal guard, two silent men with dead eyes who never strayed far from their boss. "He's still out there," Marco said, lighting a cigar. "Your promised delivery is late, Vincent. He's resourceful. I told you that Vincent's suit was immaculate, his hands steady. No sign of nerves. But he's wounded, isolated, and running out of options. It's only a matter of time." "Time I'm paying for," Marco blew smoke across the table. "Every hour Russo breathes is an hour my reputation suffers. The other families are watching, waiting to see if I can finish what I started." "You didn't start it. I did." Vincent's smile was thin. "And I'll finish it. But these things require finesse." "Finesse?" Marco laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You sold out your boss, Vincent. That doesn't require finesse. That requires greed. Call it what you want." "I prefer strategic repositioning." Vincent leaned back. "Damien's time is over. He's too cautious, too controlled. Under my leadership, with your backing, we can expand operations into territories he never dared touch." "Your leadership," Marco studied him through a haze of cigar smoke. "You really think you can hold his crew together after betraying him? The ones who matter will follow money and power. The ones who don't," Vincent shrugged, "won't be a problem." Marco's guard shifted slightly, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. The message was clear. Vincent was useful now, but his lifespan depended entirely on delivering Damien's head. "We're tightening the net," Marco said. "Checkpoints on every major route. Patrols through the south side. Pressure on anyone who might hide him. If he tries to move, we'll see it." "He'll move," Vincent said confidently. "Damien can't sit still. It's not in his nature. He'll try to reach his crew, rebuild his position. And when he does, we'll be waiting." "You better hope so." Marco stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Because if Russo slips through our fingers, you'll be the one explaining why."
Personally,
Vincent watched Marco leave, flanked by his guards. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me," he said when it connected. "Increase patrols around the south side neighborhoods. Industrial areas, too. Russo needs supplies, communication, transport. He'll surface soon. And when he does, I want to know about it immediately." He ended the call and allowed himself a small smile. 8 years he'd stood in Damien's shadow. 8 years of taking orders, of watching someone else reap the glory while he did the real work. No more. By tomorrow, Damien Russo would be dead, and Vincent would inherit an empire. Back at the gas station, Clara returned with 2 bags of supplies. She found Damien standing by the window, staring at nothing, his expression dark. "You okay?" she asked. "It's Vincent," he said quietly.
my consigliere.
"He's the one who sold me out." Clara set down the bags.
She didn't know what to say.
In her world, betrayal came from boyfriends who stole your rent money or friends who talked behind your back. But this was different. This was deadly. "I'm sorry," she finally offered. Damien turned to her, and Clara saw something new in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, something colder. "Don't be," he said, "because now I know exactly who to kill." By nightfall, they were moving again. Damien needed to get downtown, closer to where his most trusted lieutenant, Marco Knuckles Delgado, ran a legitimate security firm as a front. If anyone could rally the loyal remnants of Damien's crew, it was Knuckles. But getting there meant crossing the heart of the city, through checkpoints and patrol zones. "The interstate's out," Clara said, studying the road atlas by flashlight.
Too exposed.
"But there's an underground parking structure that connects to the old subway tunnels. Maintenance route. Goes under 3 blocks. How do you know about it? My ex used to deal out of there. Before he got arrested, she traced the route with her finger. If we can reach the parking garage, we can use the tunnels to get closer to downtown without being seen from the street." Damien studied her in the dim light. "You've lived quite a life for a waitress. You don't get to judge my survival choices." "I'm not judging. I'm impressed. Clara felt heat rise to her face and looked away. Let's just go. They moved through the city like ghosts, Clara navigating side streets and residential zones where the Castellano patrols were thinner. The Honda blended in perfectly, just another beat-up car in a working-class neighborhood. The parking structure loomed ahead, a concrete monstrosity that dove 6 levels underground. Clara pulled into the entrance, the gate arm raised and abandoned. The structure had been slated for demolition for years, caught in legal limbo. Perfect for their purposes. And perfect for an ambush. Something feels wrong, Clara murmured as they descended the first ramp. Damien felt it too. The structure was too quiet, too empty. Keep going, but slow. The Honda's headlights cut through darkness as they spiraled down. Level 2. Level 3. Graffiti covered the walls. Abandoned cars sat on flat tires, relics of unpaid parking tickets. Then Clara saw it, fresh tire marks on the dusty concrete. Damien. Headlights blazed to life behind them. Go, Damien shouted. Clara floored the accelerator. The Honda's engine screamed as she whipped around the curve, tires squealing. Behind them, an SUV roared to life, giving chase. They were waiting. Clara's knuckles went white on the wheel. Keep moving down. She took the next ramp at dangerous speed, the car's suspension groaning. Level 4. The SUV stayed close, its massive engine closing the gap. Clara could see 2 men inside, the driver and a passenger with a radio. They were calling it in. There, Damien pointed. That support pillar. Get behind it. Clara cut the wheel hard, the Honda sliding behind a massive concrete column. The SUV shot past, its brakes squealing as it tried to compensate. Clara threw the car in reverse, backed up 20 feet, then cut down a different lane, heading back up instead of down. What are you doing? Damien asked. Trusting my instincts. She was right. 2 more SUVs were descending from above, trying to box them in. Clara's reversal caught them off guard. She shot past the first SUV before it could react, climbing back toward level 3. But now all 3 vehicles were behind them, coordinating. We're trapped in here, Damien said, scanning for exits. Clara's mind raced. The structure was a maze, but she'd spent hours here years ago, waiting while her ex conducted business. She knew its layout, its quirks, The alarm system, she said suddenly. It's still active on level 2. So hold on. She took the next curve at reckless speed, tires smoking. Level 3. Level 2. The SUVs were gaining, their superior engines eating up the distance. Clara could hear their radios crackling, coordinating the trap. She spotted what she was looking for, a fire alarm station on the wall. Without slowing, she threw a water bottle she'd bought earlier, hard. It shattered against the alarm pole. Instantly, sirens wailed. Sprinklers erupted across the level. Emergency lights strobed in red and white. The SUVs hesitated, confused by the chaos. Clara used those precious seconds to shoot down a narrow maintenance lane barely wider than her Honda. The SUVs couldn't follow. Too big, too wide. She heard angry shouts, the crunch of metal as one tried anyway and scraped its side against concrete. There's a service exit, she said, breathing hard. Loading dock entrance. It connects to. The third SUV appeared ahead of them, blocking the route. Clara slammed the brakes. The Honda fishtailed, spinning 180 degrees. She shifted into drive and floored it back the way they'd come, straight toward the SUV that had gotten wedged in the narrow lane. Clara. Damien braced against the dashboard. She cut right at the last second, squeezing through a gap between the wedged SUV and the wall. Paint scraped. Metal shrieked. The side mirror tore off. But they made it through. The service exit appeared, a ramp leading to a loading dock and street access. Almost there. A figure stepped into their path. One of the Castellano scouts, radio in hand, raising a gun. Damien was already moving. He threw open his door as Clara swerved. The door caught the scout in the chest, sending him sprawling. Damien was out in an instant, moving with lethal precision despite his wounded arm. The scout scrambled for his dropped gun. Damien got there first. A brief struggle. A muffled sound. The scout went limp. "Get back in," Clara shouted. Damien dove into the passenger seat. Clara was already accelerating up the ramp, through the loading dock, and out into the blessed open air of the city street. Behind them, the parking structure's alarms continued wailing. The SUVs would have to navigate back out, dealing with the chaos she'd created. They'd bought themselves minutes. Maybe more. Clara didn't slow down until they were 6 blocks away, tucked into an alley behind a closed grocery store. Then she killed the engine and sat there, shaking, adrenaline flooding her system. "That was incredible," Damien said quietly. Clara laughed, high-pitched, almost hysterical. "That was insane. We almost died. At least 4 times. But we didn't." She turned to look at him. His face was flushed, his eyes bright. He looked more alive than she'd ever seen him. And despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the impossibility of it all, she felt it too. They'd survived. Together. "Your brother would be proud," Damien said. "The way you handled that, most trained drivers couldn't have." "Don't," Clara interrupted softly. "Don't make this about skill or training. We just got lucky." "No," Damien held her gaze. "We got good." And in the silence that followed, something shifted between them. A bond forged not in words, but in shared heartbeats and synchronized breathing. In trusting someone else with your life and having them come through. Clara started the engine. "Where to now?" she asked. "Somewhere safe. We need to regroup." She nodded and pulled back onto the street. Neither of them noticed the small tracking device, no bigger than a coin, magnetically attached to the Honda's undercarriage, placed there by the scout before Damien had taken him down. The hunt was far from over. They found refuge in another of Damien's safe houses, a vacant apartment above a laundromat in a neighborhood the Castellanos hadn't locked down yet. The space was sparse, a mattress on the floor, bottled water in the fridge, and bars on the windows. Clara collapsed onto a folding chair, every muscle aching. It was late afternoon now, day 2 of this nightmare. 48 hours that felt like 48 years. Damien stood at the window, watching the street below with the patience of a predator. His wounded arm hung stiffly at his side, but his mind was clearly racing. "We can't keep running," he said finally. "That was the plan. 48 hours, remember? Reconnect with your people, then disappear." "Plans change." Damien turned from the window. "They're not going to stop, Clara. Vincent knows how I think, knows my contacts, my safe houses. He's already leaked half of them to the Castellanos. Eventually they'll find us. Or we'll make a mistake. Or we'll run out of places to hide." Clara's stomach twisted. "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying we stop running and start fighting. That's suicide."
No.
"Suicide is waiting for them to corner us." Damien moved to the table, spread out a city map he'd pulled from a drawer. "But if we choose the battlefield, if we control the variables, we can end this." "End this how?" Clara stood, moving closer despite herself. "You're one man against an entire organization. Not just me. I still have loyalists. People who die for me, and more importantly, people who hate Vincent for his betrayal." Damien pointed to a location on the map. "There's an abandoned rail yard on the east side. Industrial zone. No civilians. Multiple entry points, but only one real exit. It's isolated, defensible." Clara stared at the map, understanding dawning. "You want to lure them there?" "Yes. That's insane." "It's strategic." Damien looked up at her. "Vincent wants me dead, so he can take over my empire. Marco wants me dead to save face with the other families. But they both think I'm weak right now, desperate. If I offer them an easy target, they'll take it." "You'd be an easy target. On the surface. But if I can get word to Knuckles, Marco Delgado, my most trusted lieutenant, he can gather the men I know are still loyal. We set a trap, let the Castellanos walk into it, and end this war before it consumes the entire south side." Clara's mind reeled. You're talking about a massacre. I'm talking about survival, Damien's voice hardened. And about protecting the neighborhood from a prolonged gang war. If this drags on, innocent people die. Your neighbors. Your brother's classmates. The longer this goes, the more collateral damage. One fight, one night, far from civilians. That's mercy compared to what's coming otherwise. Clara wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She'd grown up watching mob conflicts tear through neighborhoods like wildfires. Stray bullets. Intimidation. Blood on sidewalks where children played. If Damien was right, if this could end it quickly, away from her streets. How do you know your people will come? She asked. Because Vincent betrayed all of them. Not just me. Damien pulled out another burner phone. Loyalty runs deep in my organization. Vincent just proved you can't trust ambition over honor. My men understand that. They'll come. He dialed a number. It rang twice. Knuckles. It's me. Clara heard a muffled explosion of relief from the other end. Boss. Christ, where are you? Everyone's. Listen. No time. Damien cut him off. Vincent's the traitor. He's working with the Castellanos. Silence. Then, that son of a... I know, but we're going to fix this. Tonight. I need you to gather everyone you trust. The core crew. The ones who were there from the beginning. How many we talking? Everyone who'll come. We're ending this at the old Riverside rail yard. Midnight. Another pause. Boss, that's a kill box. For them, not us. I'll explain when you get there. Just trust me. Damien's voice softened slightly. One more time, Knuckles. Can you do that? Always, boss. Always. Damien gave him a few more details, then ended the call. He crushed the phone under his heel, a habit Clara was beginning to recognize. That's it, she asked. You just set up a gang war with a 2-minute phone call? I set up an end to a gang war. Damien met her eyes. Clara, you don't have to be part of this next part. You've done more than enough. I can. Stop, Clara surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. You think I can just walk away now? After everything? They've seen my face, my car. Vincent knows I've been helping you. He has to, if he's as smart as you say. Probably. So, I'm already a target. Already complicit. Clara moved to the window, looked out at the neighborhood she'd fought so hard to protect. Somewhere out there, Eli was in school, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. You promised he'd be safe. My brother. He will be. Then I'm in. Not because I believe in your war, or your empire, or any of this, she turned back to face him. But because the only way Eli stays safe is if this ends. Tonight, Damien studied her for a long moment. You're not just a driver anymore. No, Clara felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. I'm a co-conspirator now, willing or not. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Save it, but her voice was softer now. Tell me the plan. The real plan. What do you need me to do? Damien returned to the map. The rail yard has one main access road. I need your car positioned to block it once the Castellanos are inside. You rig it so it looks abandoned, but can be moved quickly if needed. A barricade. Exactly. And he hesitated. If things go wrong, if my people don't come, or if the Castellanos bring more men than expected, you run. You take Eli, and you leave the city. There's cash in that box over there. Enough to start over, somewhere else. Clara looked at the metal box on the floor. Escape money. Just in case. It won't come to that, she said, trying to convince herself. Probably not. Damien folded the map. But I plan for every contingency. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire. Clara thought of her father, of the choices he'd made to help people regardless of which side of the law they lived on. She thought of Eli, safe at school, unaware that his sister was about to participate in something that could never be undone. When do we leave? She asked. After dark. We scout the rail yard, set the stage, wait for everyone to arrive. Clara nodded. Then I need to make a call first. Check on Eli. Damien handed her his last burner phone. Make it quick. Don't tell him where you are. She dialed their apartment. Eli picked up on the third ring. Clara? Where are you? I came home and… I'm working a double shift, she lied smoothly. Emergency at the diner. I'll be home late tonight. Maybe really late. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. There's leftover pizza. Good. Eli, listen. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If anything weird happens, if anyone comes asking about me, you don't know anything. Got it? Clara, what's going on? Nothing. Just humor me. Okay. Okay, he sounded worried. Be safe. Always, she ended the call before her voice could break. Damien took the phone back, crushed it. Ready. Clara looked at him. This man who'd stumbled into her life 2 nights ago and turned everything upside down. This criminal, this survivor, this person who somehow understood her better than anyone had in years.
Let's end this, she said.
And as darkness fell over the city, they prepared for war. The Riverside rail yard was a skeleton of industrial decay, rusted tracks leading nowhere, collapsed warehouses, and metal shipping containers stacked like forgotten tombstones. The perfect place for ghosts to settle scores. Clara drove slowly through the entrance, her headlights cutting through darkness. The Honda's engine sounded too loud in the silence, echoing off metal and concrete. There, Damien pointed to a choke point where the access road narrowed between 2 container walls. That's where we need the car. Clara positioned the Honda precisely, angling it to create a bottleneck. Anyone trying to leave quickly would have to stop, back up, maneuver around. Precious seconds that could mean the difference between escape and capture. She killed the engine and stepped out. The night air was cold, carrying the smell of rust and oil. In the distance, the city lights glowed like a false dawn. You brought tools? Damien asked. Clara opened the trunk, revealing the toolbox from her father's garage. You said rig it. I'm rigging it. She worked quickly, removing the distributor cap and tucking it into her jacket pocket. Without it, the car wouldn't start, but she could reinstall it in under 30 seconds if needed. Then she loosened the hood latch, making it look like the car had broken down naturally. Perfect, Damien observed. Looks abandoned but functional. I'm full of surprises. Clara wiped her hands on her jeans. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady. Strange how calm she felt now that the moment had arrived. Damien checked his watch. Knuckles should be here in 20 minutes. With any luck, he'll bring at least a dozen men. And Vincent. He'll come. His ego won't let him resist. Damien's smile was cold. He thinks I'm desperate, cornered. He'll want to see my face when I realize I've lost. They moved deeper into the rail yard, their footsteps crunching on gravel. Damien had chosen the location well. Open sight lines, but plenty of cover. Shipping containers created natural defensive positions. The elevated tracks provided high ground. You should stay near the car, Damien said. When the shooting starts. I know. Stay down, stay safe. Clara looked at him. You've said it 3 times. Because I mean it, he stopped, turned to face her fully. Clara, after tonight. Don't, she cut him off. Don't do the in case I don't make it speech. We're both walking out of here. You sound certain. I have to be. For Eli. Damien reached out, his hand hovering near her face for a moment before dropping. He's lucky to have you. Yeah, well. Clara's throat tightened. Let's make sure he keeps having me. Headlights appeared in the distance. They both tensed, then relaxed as Damien recognized the vehicles. Knuckles. 3 cars rolled into the rail yard, beaten sedans and work trucks that blended into any working-class neighborhood. Men emerged from the vehicles, maybe 15 of them, moving with practiced efficiency. They spread out immediately, taking positions behind containers and walls. Marco, Knuckles, Delgado approached, a thick-shouldered man in his 40s with scarred knuckles and loyal eyes. Boss, he embraced Damien briefly. Good to see you breathing. Good to be breathing, Damien gestured to Clara. This is Clara. She's the reason I'm still alive. Knuckles nodded to her with genuine respect. Ma'am. Don't ma'am me. I'm just trying not to get killed. Knuckles grinned. You picked the wrong night for that, he turned to Damien. We got word out through the usual channels. Let it slip you'd be here, wounded and alone. Vincent took the bait. Told the Castellanos you were making a desperate last stand. How many are they bringing? Best guess? Vincent plus Marco Castellano and maybe 20 soldiers. Knuckles gestured to the positions his men had taken. We've got the high ground, surprise, and motivation. Should be enough. Should be. Damien checked his weapon, the one from the gas station cache. Remember, Vincent is mine. Anyone else fires first, but Vincent stays alive until I get to him. Understood. The men settled into their positions like pieces on a chessboard. Clara found herself crouching behind a rusted equipment box near her Honda, watching the access road. Waiting. Minutes crawled by. Then more headlights. Multiple vehicles this time, moving fast and confident. SUVs, 4 of them, sleek and dark. The Castellanos weren't hiding anymore. Here we go, Damien muttered from his position behind a container. Everyone hold until my signal. The SUVs rolled into the rail yard, their high beams flooding the space with harsh light. They stopped in a loose formation, engines idling. Doors opened. Vincent stepped out first, straightening his suit jacket like he was arriving at a business meeting. Then Marco Castellano emerged, flanked by his men, hard-faced soldiers with automatic weapons. Clara counted. 22 men. More than Knuckles had estimated. Vincent walked forward into the open space, scanning the shadows. Damien, he called out. I know you're here. Time to end this like men. Silence answered him. You can't hide forever, Vincent continued. Your empire's already gone. Your people have scattered. It's over. Come out, and maybe I'll make it quick. Always were a talker, Vincent. Damien's voice echoed across the rail yard. He stepped into view, weapon at his side, standing alone in the open. Clara's heart stopped. What was he doing? Vincent smiled, triumphant, vindictive. There you are. The great Damien Russo, brought low. Feels good, doesn't it? Knowing I outplayed you? You betrayed me. I evolved. Vincent spread his hands. You were weak, Damien. Too cautious. Too afraid to expand. Under my leadership. Your leadership ends tonight. Vincent's smile faltered. Something in Damien's tone, in his posture, too confident for a man facing certain death. Then Knuckles and his men rose from the shadows like specters. Weapons trained on the Castellanos from elevated positions, from behind containers, from every angle. The trap was sprung. Marco Castellano's men reacted instantly, raising their weapons, but finding themselves surrounded. A standoff, 15 against 22, but with superior positioning. Vincent's face went pale. This was a trap. Yes, Damien raised his weapon, aiming it directly at Vincent. You taught me everything about strategy, Vincent, including how to bait an arrogant enemy. Marco Castellano stepped forward, his voice cold. This changes nothing, Russo. You're still outnumbered. Am I? Damien's smile was knife-sharp. Because from where I'm standing, your men are in a kill box with nowhere to run. The tension was suffocating. 22 fingers on 22 triggers. One wrong move and the rail yard would become a slaughterhouse. Then Vincent made his mistake. Kill him, he screamed. Kill them all. The night exploded into gunfire. The first shot shattered the night like thunder. Muzzle flashes lit the rail yard in strobing bursts. Damien's men fired from their elevated positions, forcing the Castellanos to scatter behind their SUVs. Return fires sparked off metal containers. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and hot brass. Clara pressed herself against the equipment box, hands over her ears, heart exploding in her chest. This was real. People were dying. The thunder of gunfire was deafening. Clara. Damien's voice cut through the chaos. The lights.
Right.
The plan. Clara scrambled to her Honda, yanked open the driver's door, and slammed her palm on the horn. The car alarm shrieked to life, a piercing wail that added to the confusion. Then she twisted the key she'd left in the ignition, bringing the electrical system online. High beams blazed directly into the Castellanos' position. Several men threw up their hands against the sudden glare, temporarily blinded. Knuckles' crew used those precious seconds to advance positions, moving like shadows while their enemies were disoriented. Clara stayed low behind the engine block, the only real cover against bullets, and watched the battle unfold like a nightmare come to life. Damien moved through the chaos with lethal precision. Despite his wounded arm, he was fluid, efficient, taking down two of Marco's men as he closed the distance toward Vincent. Vincent had taken cover behind an SUV, firing wildly, all his polished composure shattered. Then Clara saw them. Two Castellano soldiers breaking away from the main fight, circling around the containers. Flanking. Coming straight toward her position. Her blood ran cold. She had seconds. Maybe less. Clara's hand found the tire iron in the Honda's trunk. Her father had always kept emergency tools within reach. The metal was cold and heavy in her grip. Not a gun. Not even a knife. But it was something. The first soldier rounded the container, weapon raised. He saw her crouched by the car and smiled. Easy prey. Clara hit the trunk release button. The trunk lid flew up, catching the soldier square in the face. He stumbled back, cursing, momentarily stunned. Clara was already moving. She swung the tire iron hard, connecting with his wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. The second soldier appeared, weapon trained on her center mass. Don't! Clara grabbed the first soldier by his jacket and spun him around as a human shield. The second soldier hesitated. 1 second of uncertainty. She used it. Clara shoved the first soldier hard into the second. They tangled together off balance. She didn't wait to see them recover. She ran, sprinting between containers, using the darkness and her knowledge of tight spaces to disappear. Behind her, angry shouts. Footsteps pounding. They were coming. Clara's mind raced. She was a waitress. She wasn't trained for this. But she'd spent her whole life navigating dangerous situations with nothing but her wits and survival instinct. That would have to be enough. She spotted a fallen wrench near an old maintenance pit, larger than the tire iron, heavier. Clara snatched it up and pressed herself against a container's shadow, controlling her breathing despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. The first soldier came around the corner, cautious now, weapon sweeping. Clara waited until he passed her position, then brought the wrench down hard on the back of his knee. He collapsed with a cry. She kicked his weapon away, then ran again before the second soldier could catch up. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like rubber. But she kept moving, kept thinking. The second soldier was shouting into his radio, calling for backup. But backup was busy. The main battle was reaching its peak. Clara could hear it. The gunfire intensifying, men screaming, metal ringing as bullets found their marks. She circled back toward the center, toward the light, toward where she could see Damien. He'd reached Vincent. The consigliera had run out of ammunition, was backing away with his hands raised. Damien, wait. We can talk about this. 8 years, Damien said quietly, his weapon steady. I trusted you with everything. It was business. Nothing personal. Vincent's composure cracked completely. The families wanted new leadership. They were going to move against you anyway. I just positioned myself to survive. You positioned yourself to profit. Damien's voice was ice. Off my death. Off the loyalty of men who would have died for you. Around them, the gunfire was dying down. Knuckles' men had gained the upper hand. The Castellanos were either down or surrendering. Marco Castellano himself lay motionless beside his SUV, a casualty of his own ambition. Vincent saw it too. Saw that he'd lost. Please, Damien. We built this together. No, Damien shook his head. I built it. You just took notes. I'll leave. I'll disappear. You'll never. The shot was quiet, almost anticlimactic after the chaos. Vincent crumpled to the ground, the betrayal in his eyes frozen forever. Clara stood 20 feet away, the wrench still in her shaking hands, watching a man die. She should feel something, horror, disgust, guilt. But all she felt was numb. It was over. Knuckles appeared beside Damien, surveying the carnage. We lost 3 men, 6 wounded, but we're secure. Marco.
Dead.
Most of his lieutenants too. Knuckles gestured to the handful of Castellano survivors, kneeling with their hands behind their heads. These ones surrendered. What do you want to do with them? Damien looked at them for a long moment. Let them go. Send a message to the other families. The Castellano-Russo war is over. New leadership will be reaching out for terms. Clara finally moved, her legs unsteady. She dropped the wrench, and it clanged against concrete, too loud in the sudden quiet. Damien turned, saw her, and his expression softened. You okay? 2 of them came after me. She gestured vaguely. I handled it. I saw. There was something like pride in his voice. You're tougher than you think. I'm a mess. Clara looked down at her shaking hands. I think I'm in shock. Probably. Damien moved toward her, checking her for injuries with his eyes. But you're alive. That's what matters. Around them, Knuckles' men were securing the scene, checking bodies, treating wounded. The rail yard looked like a war zone because it had been won. Is it really over? Clara asked quietly. Damien looked back at Vincent's body, at the scattered Castellano vehicles, at the price paid in blood for power and betrayal. Yeah, he said finally. It's over. But as Clara met his eyes, she wondered if anything would ever really be over after tonight. Some things, once done, changed you forever. And she just learned that lesson the hardest way possible. 3 days after the rail yard, Clara returned to work at the diner. The morning shift manager raised an eyebrow when she walked in. Clara had called in sick for 4 consecutive shifts, something she'd never done in 4 years. But he didn't ask questions. In this neighborhood, people understood that sometimes you needed to disappear for a while. Clara tied on her apron and poured coffee with steady hands, pretending everything was normal. Pretending she hadn't watched men die. Pretending she hadn't helped orchestrate a mob war. The bruises on her arms, from diving behind the equipment box, from struggling with the soldiers, were hidden beneath long sleeves. The nightmares were hidden behind a professional smile. Table 7 needs a refill, the manager called. On it. Normal. Everything was normal. Except nothing would ever be normal again. Damien appeared on the 4th day. Clara was wiping down tables during the lunch lull when she looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. He wore a different suit, expensive, perfectly tailored, no bloodstains. His arm was still bandaged beneath the jacket, but he stood straight, powerful, like the wounded man in her back seat had been erased and replaced with the crime lord he'd always been. Their eyes met. Clara's heart stuttered. He chose a booth in the back corner. She approached with her order pad, playing the role. Coffee, she asked. Please, his voice was quiet. And a moment of your time. Clara poured the coffee, then slid into the booth across from him, keeping her posture casual. To anyone watching, they were just a customer and a waitress on her break. You shouldn't be here, she murmured. I know. But I had to see you. Damien pushed an envelope across the table. For everything you did. Everything you risked. Clara looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. How much? 50,000. She laughed, quiet, bitter. That's the going rate for nearly dying? Clara. I don't want your money, Damien. She met his eyes. I didn't do this for money. I did it because you promised Eli would be safe. Because I didn't have a choice. Because... She stopped, not knowing how to finish that sentence. Because somehow, in the middle of all that insanity, I started to trust you. Clara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. And that terrifies me more than anything else that happened. Damien was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled the envelope back. At least let me. No, Clara stood. We had a deal. 48 hours, then you disappear from my life. So disappear. She walked away before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before the ache in her chest could turn into something she couldn't control. When she looked back, the booth was empty. The envelope was gone. And so was he. 5 weeks later, Clara came home to find Eli sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his laptop screen with tears streaming down his face. Eli? She dropped her purse, rushing to him. What's wrong? What happened? He turned the laptop toward her, unable to speak. It was an email from the hospital billing department. His medical debt, $47,000 from the car accident 2 years ago, the weight that had been crushing them both, had been paid in full by an anonymous donor through an untraceable account. Clara's breath caught. I don't understand, Eli whispered. Who would, Clara, who did this? She stared at the screen, her mind reeling. 50,000. He'd offered her 50,000, and she'd refused. So, he'd found another way. A way she couldn't refuse. I don't know, she lied softly. Maybe Dad had life insurance we didn't know about. Maybe. Clara, Eli grabbed her hand. This changes everything. I can actually go to college now. I can, his voice broke. We're free. Clara pulled him into a hug, blinking back her own tears. Yeah, we're free. But she knew better. Freedom had a price. And she'd paid it in the Riverside rail yard. Over the following weeks, Clara noticed other changes. The corner boys who used to hassle her on her way home started nodding respectfully. The landlord, who'd been threatening eviction over late rent, suddenly became accommodating. Mrs. Chun from the corner store started slipping extra items into her grocery bag without charge. People knew. They didn't talk about it. This neighborhood understood the value of silence, but they knew. Clara was the woman who'd hidden Damien Russo. The woman who'd survived 2 days on the run with the South Side's most powerful man. She hadn't joined his world, hadn't become part of his empire. But she'd earned something almost as valuable, respect. And in this neighborhood, respect was currency. Outside the diner, a sleek black car started appearing occasionally. Never the same car twice. Never staying long. Just there, a silent presence, before disappearing into traffic. Clara never acknowledged it, never looked directly at it. But she always knew when it was there. 3 months after the rail yard, Clara was closing up the diner on a quiet Thursday evening. The sun was setting, painting the street in shades of amber and gold. She locked the door and turned to head home. A familiar car rolled slowly down the street. Not the black sedans from the past months. The Honda. Her Honda, repaired, the paint touched up, the missing side mirror replaced. The car stopped at the red light directly across from where she stood. Through the window, their eyes met. Damien looked different. Harder maybe. Or maybe just more himself. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just held her gaze for 3 long seconds, an eternity and an instant. Clara didn't smile either, but she nodded. Once. Brief. A acknowledgement. A goodbye. A thank you. The light changed. The Honda rolled forward and disappeared around the corner. Clara stood on the sidewalk, watching until the taillights vanished. Then she turned and walked home, where Eli was probably doing homework, where bills still waited but felt less crushing now, where life continued in all its messy, complicated glory. She'd never see Damien Russo again. They both knew it. The story was over. The 48 hours long past. But some bonds weren't measured in time. Some connections were forged in fire and blood, and impossible choices made in the back of a beat-up car during the longest 2 days of your life. Clara turned down her street, walking past neighbors who nodded with new respect, past corners where she'd once felt unsafe but now felt, if not protected, then at least acknowledged. Seen. She was still a waitress, still a sister, still a survivor. But she was also something else now. Something she couldn't quite name. The woman who'd hidden a king and lived to tell about it, even if the telling was done only in silence, only in knowing glances, only in the quiet way power recognized power. Above her, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. And somewhere in the city, Damien Rousseau drove on, a ghost in her rearview mirror, a memory that would never quite fade. The debt was paid. The war was over. And life somehow went on.